Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, guest designer with Bello's Designs. Today's tutorial will be part 2 of a 3-part series on how to use vellum paper in card making. This tutorial will show you how to use mica on vellum to create a soft overlay to a stamped and inked base piece, as well as using mica on your card base. Let's begin by looking at the supplies. We'll be using the following items today. We'll be using the Lavinia Multifarious Smooth and Supreme A6 cards. We will be cutting the cardstock into a 3-inch circle. We will also be using vellum today that we've also cut into a 3-inch circle. And we will be using a piece of cardstock that we've cut into a frame that will be 3 1/4 inches that will fit on top of our pieces, our circles that we have used. The stamps we'll be using today will be the Fern Leaf. This one is LAV 124. We'll be using the Fairy Fir Tree 2, the small, LAV 492S. And we'll be using the Fox Set 1, which is LAV 635. We'll be using black archival ink for our stamping, and then we will be using the Tim Holtz Distress inks. The following colors are the ones that we'll be using. We'll be using Salty Ocean, Peacock Feathers, Antique Linen, Brushed Corduroy, Aged Mahogany, Carved Pumpkin, and Black Soot. Other items that we're going to use today include a teal green mica powder, embossing ink, a fan brush, and a fine tip black marker. We'll also be using the Lavinia stencil. This one is called Pebble, and it is ST010. For my sentiment, I actually just used a little Tim Holtz sentiment that you can get out of the little book that comes with both black and white stickers. So you have a lot of options with that one. And then we will also be using a circle mask. It'll be a 1-inch size. It's kind of hard to see, but there's my 1-inch circle mask. And then you'll also be using a piece of paper that you have torn the edges. We'll be using this both for the background and for the clouds across the moon. Please see below for a detailed list of supplies and the links to find them on the Bello's Designs website. Let's get started making our card. Here's a card that I made earlier. We'll be using this design for the tutorial today. For our first layer, we'll be using the circle that we cut out of the multifarious cardstock. I'm going to push these aside for the moment so we can go ahead and get our circle laid down here. For our first layer, we're going to start out by putting our torn piece of paper that we'll be using for our landscape across. I'm going to go ahead and tape that down just a little bit. That just helps to keep the mask in place while I'm doing all the other work. And then we're also going to go ahead and use our circle mask. We're going to put that over just slightly to the right hand side. I'm going to go ahead and just use a little bit of tape also to keep my circle from, both of my circles here, from moving around too much. So I'll just tape a little bit of that painter's tape. And a little bit behind our circle. So we're going to start out with the salty ocean. And the peacock feathers. I'm going to go ahead and grab a couple of daubers. So we will take our dauber and ink it up, and then just cover the entire circle with the ink. This is again the salty ocean to start out with. Once we have our salty ocean on, we will go ahead and use the peacock feathers to just do a little bit of an aura around our moon. So basically I'm just taking that ink and flicking it out around the circle. To create that little bit of an aura. And we can remove our mask. Next, using the peacock feathers again, we're going to go ahead and, no, actually this, I'm sorry, let's go ahead and do our little bit of sunrise first. So let's take our carved pumpkin, and we're just going to kind of put it right here close to the bottom of the horizon line, just to kind of give a little bit of an effect that the sun's going to be coming up just in a few minutes. Alright, so now we can go ahead and remove our mask that we made for the horizon line there, and use the same mask with the peacock feathers to make our cloud effect. So we're just going to ink that up a little bit and just gently flick along the edge to create the look of clouds. All right. Now that we've finished our clouds, we can go ahead and put in a little bit of our landscaping colors. I'm going to go ahead and start out with the antique linen. And I'm going to go ahead at this point and just go ahead and fill in the entire landscaped area with a little bit of the antique linen. This is just going to be kind of our little base. Alright, and then I want to go ahead and move on to my brushed corduroy. And with that one, what I want to do is basically just put in just a little bit. Actually, I think I'm going to go ahead and use the mahogany instead. Let's go ahead and do that. That will give us just a little bit more of a impression with our landscaping. So I'm just going to brush it lightly at the top of where our landscape meets our sky, just to give a little bit of a shadowing kind of effect. And then maybe just a little bit more. Down in here. I don't want anything solid really there. I just really would like that to be more of a soft showing of landscape. I'm going to go ahead and buff it just a little bit here so it's not quite so dark, and smooths it out just a little bit. All right, now I'm going to take my black pen, which I have dropped. All right, let me grab a pen real fast. All right, so with our black pen, what we're going to do is we're just going to give a little bit of definition to some of our landscaping. Draw in just a little bit of grass and hill area. That way it gives it depth. Don't need a whole lot, just a little bit, just to kind of give it just a little bit of an impression. Okay, so now we're ready to go ahead and do our fox. I'm actually going to go ahead and use my platform, my stamping platform, so we can be sure to get a very nice, clean image. So I'm going to take the stamping platform, going to put my circle on it. I have got a sticky sheet down so that when I put it down on there, it won't wiggle around. Alright, now I'd like to get my fox kind of with his nose just a little bit over the moon, so it gives it again some more depth. And then taking the black archival ink, we will ink up the fox. Alright, make sure we've got a nice, good, even coating on there. And stamp our image down. Hopefully this will have given us a nice clean ink image. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to probably go ahead and put just a tiny bit more there, right around his chest. Alright, I'm very pleased with that image. And now we'll go ahead and peel him off of the stamping platform. I do like for my fox to have a little bit of shadowing under him, that way it gives him some grounding. So I'm going to take the black soot and we're going to put just a little bit just around the base of him. So that it looks like he's sitting on the ground. Casting just a slight shadow there. Okay, so now our fox is ready. And we'll close up these inks and get them out of the way so that we can begin the second phase. I'm going to let this kind of dry just a little bit so we don't get any smears, because what our next level is going to be is the vellum on top. Now what we want, as you can see on our other card, what we'd like to do for the mica is that we're going to put a little bit of the fern leaves around the outside edge and a tree in the mica. This way it kind of looks like that's more in the foreground and he's shadowed in the back behind the vellum. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and grab a plain piece of paper so that we don't get our mica everywhere and we're able to pick it up and put it back into our pot when we're done with it. Alright, so we've got our mica. I actually have a little spoon here. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and use my anti-static pouch. Tap it around on my vellum. Alright, and then I'm going to grab my embossing ink. With our embossing ink, we are going to start out with our tree. This is the fairy fir tree. And we're just going to ink up the stamp with the embossing. All right. Now we're just going to do this kind of over the edge. We want it to kind of go off the side just a little bit. So we're going to put that down, get a good emboss impression. And it's very, very hard to see, but you should see just a faint shadow of your tree image. Next, we're going to take our ferns and we're going to do the same thing. We're actually going to go ahead and stamp it up with some of the embossing ink. And I really only want it to go, oh, maybe 2/3 of the way around. So I will stamp my first one down. Get a little more ink. And like I said, it's kind of hard to see it, so I have to get it in the light. Do a little bit more. And maybe one more time. Just down here at the bottom a little bit. Okay, so like I said, you can't see it very well, but you will be when we put our mica powder on. So now I'm going to take my mica and just dump a little bit of it out. Don't need a whole lot. Just kind of sprinkle some on there. Doesn't have to be precise at this point in time, because what we're going to do is we're going to take our fan brush and we're just going to gently distribute it around the card, around the vellum. So that it picks up where we did our embossing ink. And now you can see we've got that really pretty mica and kind of a little frame. I'm going to actually put just a tiny bit more over here on this corner, see if I can brush a little bit of that across here. There we go. So it picks up just a little bit more on that corner. Alright, then we're going to set that aside. And if you have excess mica powder, you can always just put it back into your container. Now I'm going to set that aside for the moment. So now we have created our base. There it is. And we've created our vellum that's going to go on top. Now, I want to go ahead and just tack it down just a little bit. So I have got a glue here that has a very, very fine point tip. I've actually just ordered some of the glue pens that will probably work a whole lot better, but they haven't come in yet since I just ordered them yesterday. So I'm just going to take a couple of little dots around the edges just to make sure that we can get it tacked down. Alright, line that up where we want it. And press down. Alright, so now we have got our first pieces done, the base piece, and then the vellum on top with the mica. Now we need to go ahead and do our card base so that we can put that on there. So what I've done is I have taken some cardstock. This is basically an 8.5 by 11 cardstock that I cut in half, and then I have folded it in half. So in order to really make this background look pretty, we're going to go ahead and do the mica again on the background. You can see how pretty that looks with that. The way that we do that is we will take our pebble stencil, lay it down on top of our cardstock, and if you want to kind of tape your stencil down just a little bit so it doesn't wiggle around too much, you can do that as well. I like to do that. Just get another little piece here and kind of tape that down. Then what we're going to do is take our embossing ink again, and this time we're just going to dab it across on top of our stencil, making sure that we get all of the spots through the stencil with the embossing ink on it. It's really hard to see, but it's making the pattern that we want it to make. Alright, then when we lift our stencil up, you can kind of see now where the embossing ink is. So we're going to take a piece of paper, and again I'm actually going to go ahead and get a fresh piece of paper so we don't get the mica all over the back of our card here. We're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to take our mica and sprinkle it across our card. Take our fan brush, brush it across there very gently so that we're hopefully getting the mica to cover all areas where it's been embossed, where the embossing ink has gone. Now it looks like somehow I didn't quite get my embossing ink right there on the corner, so I'm just going to actually take this and get a little bit of the embossing ink. Let's see where my embossing ink is. Just try and get that corner that I missed. Alright. I don't know if I'm going to quite be able to get that to pick up like I want to, but we'll see. There we go. A little bit more on that little spot. I think because of the fold, it's not quite picking up pebbles like I want it to. And now I've kind of got mica on my embossing pad. I have to clean that off. All right. So now you can see that pretty little shine that the mica does on our card front. Okay, so I had stopped the camera so that I could go outside and go ahead and put a spray finish on top of this that keeps your mica from rubbing off or getting scratched off. I usually just use a matte finish Krylon spray that helps to keep that in place so that it doesn't go away, doesn't get scratched off or messed up. So now we are to the point where we are ready to go ahead and get our pieces mounted onto the card and the frame ready to put on as well. So I'm going to go ahead and glue the base card on. I'm just going to go ahead. You can use glue or you can use the adhesive running tape. My little thing is stopped up just a little bit. There we go. So we'll go ahead and just put a little glue in on the surface of this. I'm going to glue it just a little bit up on the top because I want to put a sentiment down here. So let me get that centered where I want it and glue that down. Alright, now I'd like to get my frame ready to put around the outside edge. I'm going to go ahead and take the brushed corduroy. Actually, let's go ahead and do antique linen. So I'm going to use the brushed corduroy around the edges so that we can kind of give it a little bit of an antique look. So I'm going to go ahead and lay, oops, that's got my mic on it. Let's get a cleaner piece of paper here. I'm going to just lay my circle down, my circle frame, and just get a little bit of the antique linen buffed around the edges there. Just get a little bit of the color so that way it kind of matches the background that we have on the main card part. Alright, and now that I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and take the, let's see, make sure I've got my colors right here. Alright, that's my antique linen and my brush corduroy. So I'm going to take the brush corduroy and I'm just going to go around the edges of my frame here to just give it a little bit of an antique kind of look. And do a little bit on the inside of the circle as well. right. Now we're going to take our card and we'll glue our frame around the outside. Clear that out just a little bit. All right. So that we're able to glue our frame down. There we go. Gives us just a little bit of a finished look there with our antiqued frame. Now I also like to kind of have my edges of my cards with a little bit of that antique look. I just kind of like the way that it looks with like a little finishing touch, I guess you might say. So I'm going to go ahead and take the brush corduroy again, and I'm just going to do a little bit around the edges here just to kind of give a finished frame. It also gives it a slight little antique look. There we go. All right, and then our final thing that we're going to do is put our sentiment on our card. Let's see, I think we're going to go ahead and do, how about be open to whatever comes next. So I'm just going to peel that off. It's got a self-adhesive sticky back. And I'm just going to center that down here across the bottom. All right, now, because that's obviously very, very white and doesn't really blend in with our colors, I'm going to go ahead and take some of the peacock feathers, and I'm just going to touch around that just so that it kind of blends in with our card background. So it kind of looks like it belongs there. And of course, if you wanted to, you could always kind of go around and antique the edges of that as well. We won't go ahead and do that now, but that's always an option that you can do so that it kind of matches the antiquing around the edges of the frame. And so there, now we have finished our card. Got the beautiful vellum on top with the mica on top of that, on top of the background there that we did with our stamps and our inking. So again, the background has a nice little soft misty look because of the vellum on top of it. You can also do this process, the exact same process that you do with the mica, except with embossing ink if you prefer to do that. So this is a card that I have made where I went ahead and did a background, and then as I did my stamping, the way that we same did with the embossing ink on the leaves and the tree here, I actually used the embossing ink instead of the mica on top of it. So that just gives you a little bit of a different look. I hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial and that you will play around with doing the mica on top of the vellum. I look forward to seeing you when we do part 3. Have a great day.